Welcome into Black and Gold Insider. This is the show where we get to know the members of the Black and Gold a little bit better. I am Max Bretos, and we may have to go a little sideways here because everyone knows and loves John Thorrington, co-president and GM of LAFC. How are things, John? I know your plate is pretty full.
It is. Thank you for that. I'm not sure I could agree with you that everybody loves me, but I'll take it. Yes, our plate is full, but all for good reason. And we're, certainly huge week ahead. And thankfully, in our relatively short history, we've had a number of these big weeks, which is what we're in this business for.
And we're soaking it in. And the reason I say that is because we're going to go a little newsy because obviously as you mentioned, we have this big game coming up Saturday. Maybe you heard a spot to qualify for the FIFA. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to the listeners. Of course, you've heard. I got you. The FIFA Club World Cup qualifier against Club America. We'll talk about that here shortly. But the more immediate news that just broke this week that Carlos Vela is going to remain with LAFC as the first club ambassador. He's announced his retirement from professional football. He will be celebrated at BMO Stadium during Noche de Carlos Vela on September the 21st versus RSL. 19-year career, John, that ended here in black and gold colors. I want to go back to when this all started. It was August of 2017. He became the first player signed for LAFC, a huge responsibility. And as a guy, you wanted to build this club all around. Why was it the perfect fit, and when did you know he was all in?
Yeah, it in some ways it feels like yesterday, and in some ways it feels like 20 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I would say August was the announcement. I would say me and my relationship with Carlos started a bit earlier that year in 2017. And we had done a lot of diligence on a number of options as to who that main, I call it the cornerstone, who's that guy that we're going to build around. And a lot of it was doing that research in concurrently with the plan we had with the head coach and all the rest of it. And what we had decided is let's do all that diligence, let's get the head coach, and then with that diligence we'll say, okay, this is the list of options and the pros, the cons, what have you. And very quickly, once we'd announced Bob, that was our first priority. And a lot of the groundwork had been done. And I think in conversations with who we are as a club, how we wanted to play, how Bob saw everything, it was clear Carlos was the guy. And so thankfully, we have a really good relationship with the club, Real Sociedad. To answer your question as when did you know he was all in, it became very clear to me early that Carlos wanted to do something different. And it became very clear to me that he understood that LAFC was different and that he could have gone to another club and Carlos would have made a difference wherever he would have gone. But I think he really understood what he could do here in terms of helping set a trajectory for a new club in LA, this ambitious club, brand new. And that really spoke to him. So I got a sense of that. And then I think the proof of him being all in was, if I remember right, my language at his introductory press conference was something along the lines of, not only did LAFC choose Carlos Vela chose LAFC. What I meant by that was he had a number of options, and he really understood this opportunity. And of course, you align, you get married, and then the proof is then after the honeymoon and you get down to it, it proved to be the perfect fit. And we could not have made a better decision on who that cornerstone piece of our club would be. And it would be impossible for me to overstate what Carlos has meant to LAFC on the pitch, off the pitch, mainly what he delivered on the pitch, but coupled with everything and how he represented the club, how he played. It was just, you go back to that 2019 season, almost every time he stepped on the field was like a sight to behold. And you knew it was coming. And it was just such an exciting period for this club to really set the trajectory as to not just to send a message, these are the types of players we're going to have, this is how we're going to play. And, as early as the first pass and the first goal of LAFC's history that he set, what was the best years of any player in LAFC history. And so we're here to deservedly recognize all he has done for LAFC.
it's the perfect fit, and I imagine exceeded every expectation. If it was a different player to fill that role, who knows what this club would have looked like. But here we are, and Bennett Rosenthal, the LAFC co-owner, would say that he set the black and gold standard, and it's created a foundation that we continue to grow from to this day. With regards to Carlos on the field, I mean, he didn't rewrite the LAFC record books. He created the LAFC record books, and the MLS record books he certainly rewrote. Multiple trophies, the 2019 MVP, the Golden Boot, list goes on and on. What stood out about for you the on-field accomplishments? And there's some that maybe just a tick above all the magnificent ones that he had.
I think you have to think back to 2019, and what I think is remarkable is you see players now, even Denis, and we've had some, we've had 3 Golden Boot winners here, and you see the metrics, and you're like, wow, that's an incredible year. And then you look at Carlos's, and it's on another planet. And that's no disrespect to the other players, but you just think about that level of consistency. And he didn't play every game. He had a couple of injuries and missed a couple games here and there to score that many goals. But I just think he set, as Bennett said in his quote, he set a standard. And I think you can even think back to the game we had against Leon, which of course wasn't 2019, but early 2020 at home, down 2-0. And we're thinking, okay, what's this going to look like? And I remember Carlos made a sliding tackle on the sideline right in front of Leon's bench. And you could literally just feel the stadium say, like, okay, game on. And I think some people maybe came to that game thinking 2-0 against, for my money, one of the best teams Mexico has produced in since we've been around. And he just had that ability, whether it was a moment of quality. Rarely was it a slide tackle, I will say, but a moment of quality that just elevated everybody else, and his ability to not just score for himself, but his creativity and his ability to set things up for others was remarkable. And I will have an argument with anybody that 2019 season was the best season in MLS history.
34 goals in a single season. I don't think anyone's going to break that. I don't want to say never, but if you look at what's happened since, the highest goal tally is 23. And the old record, the prior record, was 31. And some records are meant to be broken, but that one I feel has some staying power.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that there are some difficult. I think there are more games now, so to do it in a regular season, it's not necessarily apples to apples. However, even if it was, that's a tough one. And the other thing I would say is he didn't play as a striker. He did some of the time, but he didn't even play. And look, our leading goal scorer hasn't been a striker the last few seasons either. But I think it does go. That sort of is my point, is when you look at some of the productivity that you see now, which is amazing, and then you hit pause, and then you look back at the year Carlos had, and it wasn't just goals either. Keep in mind, like, he had it was remarkable. And as I say, I will die on a hill arguing that was the best individual season in MLS history. That I agree with you. I find it difficult to see that being matched.
Make some room on that hill. I'll be on there with you. Is there a favorite Carlos memory, or maybe is there something funny or interesting that you remember, whether it was on or off the field at him, that maybe people don't know that you would be able to share with us?
Yeah, I've many. I mean, I'll start with the moments in training where he would pull something out. He had a tendency to lob our goalkeepers on a regular basis, and they would know it's coming. It was just remarkable how, you would think you're in like a pressing moment, and he would turn and hit a ball from midfield and lob a goalkeeper. But he just had these moments in training that were, again, just entertaining to watch. If I were to think of a story that not many people know, it would go back to when we were recruiting and we were talking about, what types of players we wanted. And I was fortunate to have played for the then Mexican national team coach, Juan Carlos Osorio. And I was soaking everything up I could. I was visiting clubs, national teams, everything. Anywhere I was invited, I would go. just to try to learn. And some of the time it was about a player, and obviously understanding that we had our eye on a couple of these players within the Mexican national team. And Juan Carlos Osorio was very generous. He said, look, come, and I think you would know this, Max, when the Mexican national team travels around the U.S., it is like tight-knit security everywhere. And he just let me come in and be a part of the wallpaper, and had some really good time with him. And Carlos wasn't even in this camp. But I remember, and this would have been early 2017, maybe late 2016, but I remember sitting at a table, and I overheard some of the veteran guys talking, and they wouldn't have known they knew who I was. And thankfully, on account of LAFC, I count myself popular, knowing it has nothing to do with me. But whenever I go around clubs and they say, oh, this is John from LAFC, everybody's like, hey, John, my next club, etc. So I was there. So they knew I was there, but they were having a conversation, some of these veteran national team players. And I remember overhearing, it wasn't to me, I remember overhearing these guys talk about Carlos. And Carlos was a big part of the national team. For whatever reason, he wasn't in this camp. And I remember them saying, man, you should see this guy now. He's got a kid now. He's married. He's uber professional. And like, he's so changed. He's so focused. And I thought to myself, because that wasn't necessarily Carlos's reputation at the time. And unprovoked, I didn't ask for it. They weren't even talking to me. But that planted a seed where I said, maybe this is the right guy. And after that moment is when we really in earnest went. And I knew, because when we were laying the foundation, how important it was to get the decision right. I had that in the back of my mind, that I felt it was de-risked a little bit when I hear his peers talk about him that way without an agenda. They weren't selling him to me. They weren't even talking to me. And so that's just an anecdote that I don't think people know, but and you talk just about serendipity, to be in that room, which I otherwise wouldn't have been, to be sitting there and hearing that conversation, which then helped plant a seed. We maybe would have signed Carlos anyways, but the whole time I would reference that, and I would say, hey, when we're talking about character and how important that is, this is what I'm hearing about this guy from his Mexican national team teammates. Had they said something like, man, this guy parties all the time, what a disaster, we would never have signed him.
That's remarkable. It says a lot about you too, John. I mean, taking that opportunity and just listening, right? And putting that all into this case, which was a huge, look, this is the club. It's the first player. It's just a massive responsibility, opportunity, risk. Yes, there's certainly risk involved. We've seen that with so many other clubs through the years. Yep. But we love Carlos, and we look forward to seeing this new role with him. I'm going to shift it here quickly to a big game Saturday. We have been talking internally about this LAFC Club America. Where does it stand in the pantheon of LAFC games? To me, it's maybe at the top because it is the result of the MLS Cup, followed by making a CONCACAF Champions Cup final, and you earned this spot. How do you view its status?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying, of course, we would rather qualify automatically, having won a Champions League, which we've been so close twice. But I do think, given FIFA's decision, I think we have the best argument to be there. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, at least to have a chance to qualify. I also understand the rationale with America. My focus isn't on FIFA's rationale, but my focus now is on supporting the team to put our best foot forward come Saturday. When it comes to where this stands, it's a hard one to answer. By some metrics, it's the biggest game in club history. We shouldn't shy away from the magnitude of the occasion and the opportunity. Club that's set out to be a part of the global conversation, and the opportunity to be in the Global Club World Cup is amazing in our short history to have this opportunity. And I hope this isn't our last chance at it, nor the last time we're hopefully in it. I do think it does have a slightly different dynamic to a final where the whole tournament culminates in one game and then it's done. This one, of course, will be an amazing accomplishment, but it's to qualify for a tournament that you want to continue. So it's a slightly different dynamic to compare to a Champions League final, to compare to MLS Cup, to compare to other big games we've had. What I would say is I am grateful that a lot of our players do have experience in big games. And I know our supporters also, when we're at home and we have that, and I know it's not going to feel like a typical home match, but I know our supporters will show up in full force and help our players rise to the occasion. So by some metrics, biggest game in club history, slightly different dynamic in that it's a qualifier. Regardless if it's the biggest, second biggest, third biggest, it's certainly big enough.
Big enough.
And we're excited.
We've never really seen a game like it. And to your point, it's like a little reverse engineered as you play this final to get into that group stages, but soak it all in. What about Club America? What does that name, that brand mean to you? Because the opponent matters here. And, they bring so much clout into this game. But you mentioned your connection to Juan Carlos Osorio and the Mexican game. What does Club America, when I say that name, mean to you?
Yeah, we have great relationships. I mean, we had them in an exhibition game in February of this year. Great relationship with them. Great level of respect for the institution, for what they mean. And I think it's a fair argument that they're the standard bearer for football in our region throughout their history. And even more recently, I know they're coming off a disappointing defeat in not winning the title on Sunday, but they've won plenty recently, which, FIFA decided that they are worthy of being in this final with us. So tremendous amount of respect. We know it's going to take a great performance to beat them. I am confident that we have the group to do that. And I think bigger picture, if we want to be a global club, it starts with your own region. And if we can be the standard bearer of football in our region alongside, or maybe even to usurp Club America, that will be saying something because of their amazing history. And where I would say we can't compete with them on history, I do think we can compete with them now and moving forward. And our goal as a club is to be the one of, if not the club, people talk about when they refer to the institutions, the clubs from North America that are really elevating the game and establishing themselves as a part of the global conversation.
And what a great opportunity. And I'm not going to put the cart before the horse, so I'm not going to ask you what would it mean for LAFC to play in the Club World Cup. But let me ask you and you may have answered in that last question, but what would it I'll phrase it differently. How do you view this competition from FIFA and the chance for an MLS team, whoever that might be, to face the best clubs in the world every 4 years or whatever it might look like?
Yeah, the Club World Cup didn't exist when we started, but I think everybody will see the priority we put on not just being another MLS team, but the priority we put on Champions League, qualifying for Champions League, doing our best to win Champions League, which we've come painfully close on 2 occasions, which no other team had done. And I think what that was for is so that we could get into the World Championships. But that's very different from what we're facing now. Now, this is the Club World Cup, which is very different from, the Champions League winners and the smaller tournament that takes place each year. So this is an amazing opportunity for us to fulfill that ambition. We're going to continue to go for it in Champions League every chance we get. We fell short this year, and that was really bitter disappointment. Thankfully, and especially as you think about the lead up into this game, the response of the group since that painful defeat in Miami has been really strong. And I think that bodes really well, I think, for Saturday when we put a team out there to compete against America.
Just listening to you there, and this is why I love being affiliated with this club. There's never a dull moment. There's always another big game around the corner. And I know we have you and, of course, Carlos Vela and so many others to thank. John, great chatting with you as always. We'll let you get back to the busy preparations with Saturday, Carlos, and everything else that comes with your day-to-day.
Always great speaking with you, Max.
All right, John Thorrington, co-president, general manager here of LAFC. That brings an end to Black and Gold Insider. We'll be here every week, continuing to do what we do. And until then, this is Max saying, let's go Black and Gold.